Hey, it's Parker, and here are 10 things you should know when moving to Atlanta. Number 1, Georgians are super friendly. Georgians will strike up a conversation with a stranger just about any time or place. They start a conversation in the grocery store checkout line. They smile at you when you're walking down the street. They wave from their car as they drive by. And if a total stranger waves at you, it's considered polite to just wave back, even if you don't know them. Georgians are also super polite people. We use thank you like punctuation, and we really mean it. Georgians are very, very appreciative people. Number 2, Atlantans are very polite, like I said, but they can get a little crazy on the highway. Back in the early 2000s, the Atlanta perimeter was just kind of like the Wild West. The police had really let it get out of control, and you had people just, weaving in and out of traffic at high speeds. It was really kind of a nightmare there for a while. They've gotten most of that under control, but you still have the people that aren't happy unless they're, risking a high-speed car crash. I have a theory that most of these people are from New York. But for me, I just stay in the right-hand lane and just cruise along and let everybody else slug it out. Once you get out of Atlanta, the highways are pretty smooth and you rarely see anybody doing anything crazy. Now, one other Georgia roadway peculiarity: in Georgia, funeral processions are led by police cars with their lights flashing but no sirens. So if you see one of these things, you see some police cars leading a long trail of people, it's a funeral procession, and it's generally considered polite to pull off the road the way you would for an ambulance. Number 3, Georgians love to socialize. When you move here, you're going to get invited to a lot of parties. And the rule is, if you're going to a party, don't come empty-handed. Bring some food, and definitely bring your favorite beverage. And concerning your favorite beverage, that brings us to number 4. When you live in Georgia, you need to know there are somewhat restrictive alcohol sales laws. Now, I've heard a lot of people mischaracterize this and say that, well, Georgia has all these dry counties. Let me give you the straight scoop. First off, you can only buy liquor at a liquor store. Some states like California allow you to buy liquor at the grocery store, but in Georgia, grocery stores only sell beer and wine. Up until 2011, you could not purchase alcohol in Georgia on Sundays. You could go to a restaurant after 12:30 and order a beverage there, but there were no retail sales of alcohol on Sundays. Now, in 2011, the law was changed to allow alcohol sales on Sundays after 12:30. This means if you walk up to the grocery store checkout line at noon on a Sunday and you got some beer in your basket along with all your food, they're going to say, "I'm sorry, sir, we can't sell you that beer until 12:30. One exception here is if you are in the city of Atlanta. Only in the city of Atlanta, retail sales of alcohol start on Sunday at 11 a.m. Now back to dry counties. Georgia has 159 counties, which is second only to the state of Texas. And of those 159, 12 are considered to be dry counties, but as I'm about to explain, they're not really dry counties. They should really be called moist counties because they do all allow alcohol sales in some form or fashion. These dry counties almost all allow beer and wine sales at retail and in restaurants every day except Sunday. Some prohibit distilled spirits altogether. Some have different rules for on-premises consumption versus off-premises consumption. Some allow liquor to be sold in restaurants but not in stores, and vice versa. In any case, if you're moving to Georgia, the chances of you being inconvenienced by any of this are very, very small. In Atlanta, in fact, most liquor stores open at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I've seen plenty of them that open at 8, so not really much of a problem. And if you're going out to socialize, you need to be aware of the open container laws wherever you happen to be. Most cities, like Atlanta and Savannah, will not allow you to walk around with an open can of beer, for instance. You have to pour it into a cup. All right, number 5. Speaking of neighbors, neighbors will come to your back door or your side door, but rarely to your front door. This is one of those weird things people say when they move to Georgia. It's like, why does everybody come to the side door? Why don't people come to the front door? And that's just how it is in Georgia. Usually if your front door rings, it's either the UPS man with your Amazon delivery or it's somebody trying to sell you something. Number 6, this is about how people dress. Atlanta is relatively casual now. It used to be that if you worked at a big business, everybody wore a suit, but business casual is now the norm. For example, my wife worked at Coca-Cola headquarters back in the 1990s, and everybody wore a business suit to work every single day. And I mean everyone. It didn't matter your position, you wore business attire. Now you go down there and every day is pretty much casual Friday, unless you're on the executive team. The rule for work is casual but spiffy. You don't need to necessarily dress like you're going to a wedding, but you definitely don't want to look like a slob either. Socially, jeans and a nice top can be worn just about to any social event or restaurant unless they're specifically asking for cocktail attire or formal wear. The kind of uniform for men, for cocktail parties and weddings and so on, is a navy blazer with a nice starched shirt and a pair of khakis or a pair of very nice jeans. And for women, dresses are very popular when the occasion warrants something a little dressier than jeans. One other quick fashion note, in Atlanta and the state of Georgia, we pretty much wear flip-flops all year long. If you like what we're doing here, please go ahead and subscribe. We're always putting out great new content about Atlanta and the great state of Georgia. Number 7, the Southern accent is more or less a thing of the past. Georgia brings in people from all over the country and all over the world, in fact, so you rarely hear a true Southern accent anymore. Like my Nana, my grandma was from Savannah, and she was of that deep Scotch-Irish line, and she would pronounce house the way you pronounce loose. She would say, "I'll see you at the hoose." And she would say, "yonder," which means off there and some distance. And she'd say, "cattywampus," which is another Scottish colloquialism, which means kind of slightly off kilter, kind of weird, kind of strange. Nowadays, we more often phrase that as, "he ain't right." But all of that really died with her generation. You very, very rarely hear people say any of those things anymore unless you're really in deep rural Georgia. That being said, we still use a lot of Southern phrases. Everybody still says y'all. You get bonus points if you say all of y'all. We say hey instead of saying hello. And we say I'm gonna let you go instead of I need to get off the phone. Being ugly is not about how you look, it's about your behavior. And you'll also hear a lot of people who will call you by Mr. or Mrs. plus your first name. So Mr. Parker, for instance, or Miss Judy. That only really happens to you once you reach a certain age. A couple other Southern phrases you'll hear quite often is, "I'm gonna jerk a knot in your ass," which means I'm gonna bring you back into line if you're misbehaving. Tore up, which is kind of self-explanatory, broken, wrecked, really bust up. Fixing to do something, that means I'm about to get this done. And one of my favorites, one I run into all the time, is if it was a snake, it would have bit you. That means if you're looking for something and it's literally right in front of you, like you're looking for your wallet and it's right in front of you on the desk, but you can't see it, that's what they say is like, if that was a snake, it would have bit you. Number 8, Georgia is filled with people who love to be active and love to be outdoors. I've said many times, we're blessed. We have mountains in the north and we have the ocean in the south. And in between, there are so many great things to do, so many rivers, so many golf courses, tennis courts, you name it. We love to be outdoors. Now, I mentioned tennis. Tennis is absolutely huge in Atlanta. More people play tennis in Atlanta than any other city in the United States. It's a really good way to get to know people if you're new to the area. Just go join a tennis team, even if you've never played before. There's nothing like getting out on the courts, working with a partner. You're going to get to know people very, very fast. We have a great park system throughout Atlanta, plus we have the Chattahoochee River and the Beltline. Atlantans and Georgians love to get out, get some sunshine, and enjoy the world. If you like what we're doing here, please go ahead and subscribe. We're always putting out great new content about Atlanta and the great state of Georgia. Number 9 on our list, we have some crazy creatures here. Atlanta is a gigantic forest, so it stands to reason that we have a lot of wildlife in that forest. And in fact, we do. We have a lot of creeks, so we have a lot of copperheads. It's a big, fat snake. It's about as big around as a baseball bat in the middle. And I tell you what, you do not want to get bit by a copperhead. So if you're out hiking around many of our lovely creeks, you need to be very aware of where you're stepping, stay on the trail, keep your eyes open for copperheads. If you're a bird lover, you're really going to enjoy Atlanta. It's very common to see hawks and falcons, which is one of the reasons we have the Atlanta Hawks and the Atlanta Falcons. I see those pretty much on a daily basis. We also fairly regularly see owls and these giant woodpeckers that are called pileated woodpeckers. I'll put a picture up here for you. One of my favorite things to do in the morning is to take my coffee and sit out on the patio and listen to the birds sing. It's very therapeutic. We also have opossums. Now, if you don't know what an opossum is, most people just call them possums. It is a marsupial animal, so it's related to the kangaroo, and they carry their young around in a little pouch or on their back, and it's just a really interesting creature. It's one of these animals that's so ugly it's kind of cute. And of course, with all of these oak trees, we have more squirrels and chipmunks than you could possibly imagine. Some other critters that I see fairly regularly, a lot of bunnies, little red foxes, which only come out at night, so you're only going to see them if you're kind of sitting out after dark. We also have a growing contingent of coyotes, which are increasingly aggressive, and we've had a lot of cats go missing, so if you're in Atlanta, you want to keep your cats inside the house. Number 10, of course, Atlanta can get very hot in the summer, but one of the problems you need to be aware of year-round is actually humidity. You, of course, keep the humidity down by running your air conditioning in the summer, but you get a lot of months earlier in the year where, frankly, it's not hot enough to run your air conditioning. And sometimes the opposite is true. Maybe it's the winter and it's raining, but it's not really cold enough to turn on your heat. That's when the humidity in your house can become a real problem. You know, I mentioned my grandmother earlier. She was from the generation before air conditioning. So once she finally had air conditioning installed in her house in Savannah, she didn't like to run it because it made her cold. This is actually pretty common with that older generation. So when you walk into an old person's house and it smells kind of musty and what I call old people smell, that's actually because they haven't run their air conditioning enough, and you know, the drapery and the fabric on the sofa gets a low level of mildew, and that's actually what you're smelling in the house. So you need to be very aware of that. Every house needs a dehumidifier. You're going to find that's a very, very useful tool for the off season when you don't want to run the heat and you don't want to run the air. So I hope you found this all helpful and informative and enlightening. As always, if you're thinking of making the move to the Atlanta area, please feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is in the box below. Love to hear from you. Thanks for watching.